Thumbs up, everyone, if you listen to me and if you are seeing our share screen. Bravo, thank you. Those that you don't have the video, just show us a virtual thumb up. There is this option, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And raise your hand.
Or raise your
Raise your
hand.
hand, yeah.
Yes, there is that option too. Okay. Okay. Let me test it. Hello. Okay. I also sent a message in the chat to check that this is working too. We're gonna need that. Okay. Let's see. Who's joining? Perfect. I can see. All right. Okay, I think we're ready to start and people will join later. We'll catch up in the process. Hello, everyone. We are excited to welcome you to the first podcast of the third edition of Larnaca Biennale 2023. This is an extended version of our roundtable discussions that take place in person. We have someone not mute. Maybe it's Victoria. Yes, bravo. So this is an extended version of the roundtable discussions that take place in person around Cyprus. So before we begin, I would like to thank Youth Makerspace in Larnaca for providing this space that you will see and their high-tech equipment that enable us to share this session with you. I will introduce myself. My name is Maria Papadopoulou. I'm part of the organizing team of Larnaca Biennale, an international contemporary culture event that takes place in Cyprus since 2018. Larnaca Biennale 2023 runs its third edition that will take place from the 11th of October until the 24th of November in the beautiful and historical city of Larnaca. Through the duration of the Biennale, along with the main exhibition of selected artworks, a unique program of parallel events will run, all of it embracing and enforcing the theme of this edition that is curated by Yev Kravt, our curator that is here with us today. Hello, Jeff. Embracing the theme and enforcing the theme home away from home. Having said that, the open call for artists is still open until May 31st, where you can submit your artwork that is relating to the theme. So further information, if you need, you can find in our website and through our social media. The website is biennalelarnaca.com. So today, we have gathered in this virtual setup to speak about home, to speak about belonging, to speak about our memories of the future, of the memories of the past, to be inspired and to look deeper into the theme, and eventually to see how all of this is translated into art. For this session, we will welcome our speakers. Our curator, Yev Kravt, will take the lead to start the conversation. We encourage you to participate in the conversation by sharing your questions in the chat or the hand if you want to share your thoughts or something that comes in mind as the discussion comes along. So we have our two speakers in the studio and we have one virtual speaker that is with us all the way from Athens. So I will introduce and make a very short introduction. So we have with us Christos Peristianis, who has an interdisciplinary background combining sociology, social, cultural history, and he's a human geographer. Christos has been researching home for the last 10 years from an academic perspective, and we look forward for his insights on the theme. Next, we have Pavlos Koronis, that has a background in psychology, anthropology, and international management. He's one of the founders of the new European Bauhaus 2022 People Prize, Garden of the Future, and Paul has also curated and organized over 10 TEDx Nicosia and TEDx Nicosia women events. And last but not least, I would like to introduce Yev Kravt, the Larnaca Biennale 2023 curator, an independent curator living between Amsterdam and Larnaca, of course. With a background in communication, philosophy, and art history, her work encompasses a range of cultural, creative, and social initiatives. Over the past year, Yev has organized numerous exhibitions at museums, galleries, and non-profit spaces. So I think now it's time to pass the microphone to Yev, and let's all be inspired of what does home mean to you.
Wow, Maria, thank you so much for this introduction. It was a beautiful one. And yes, let's begin. Paul, are you with us in the game? Can we hear you? Just one check.
I am, and I can hear everybody.
That's amazing. Great. Welcome, Paul. Welcome, Christos. I'm very happy to have you here in the studio of the Larnaca Makerspace. And just to check in, how's your mood today?
Everything is going well up to now. Thank you, Yev.
That's very good. Paul, how's your mood today?
Everything's great, and I'm actually a little bit excited because I heard that we have a geographer. I'm sorry if I say it wrong. Geographer at large, at hand. How do you explain it? We got to talk about something which is beautiful. It's called chimeric sphere, but that we will talk about that later. Now we're going to look at home away from home.
Okay, I'm very excited about the following up talk as well. I wanted to add something to the introduction, and I think it's something very exciting. So we are recording this conversation, and this conversation will be also streamed at Momentum 12 during the Nordic Biennale of Contemporary Art. So I think it's we're not only in Cyprus, we are also in Oslo in a few weeks. So it's pretty awesome. To kick off, I would like to have a little bit of an exercise with the people in the Zoom. And I would like you to think and write down in the comments in 1 or 2, maybe 3 words. What is the first thing you think about when you think about home? So I give you a little bit of time. You don't have to rush. Maria will see all the answers.
Yes, I'm looking at the chat now.
What is the first thing you think about when you think about home, Christos?
It's a funny question. So I knew that question was going to pop up.
Oh, yeah.
So yesterday when I was running, I was thinking what are possible answers to that question. And I was like, I know that there is an easy answer and there is a much complicated one. So the easy one is that for me, it's research. So it is my research.
Yeah.
The much more complicated one, home depends. And 3 dots on many things.
Wow. Okay, we will delve into the dots in a little bit. Paul, what is the first thing that pops up into your mind when you think about home?
I'm going to say safe space, and I think that's something that we discussed before as well. It remains as part of my main definition of home, because no matter where the if you want to call it a building, if you want to call it a hut, if you want to call it anything where you would be housing yourself, it is where you feel the most safe. That's how I would define it.
Beautiful. Did we get some answers in the comments?
Yes, we did. We have Julia that says body, and in the brackets gender.
Mhm.
We also have Priscilla that says warmth, safety, family. 3 words.
Yeah.
And we're waiting for more people. Antigone, journey, dreams, traveling.
Okay, I'm writing it down as well.
Giulia, I hope that I pronounced that correct. Language and origin.
Language and origin. Okay, beautiful. Yeah.
Meren says anything that touches my deeper emotions. Very nice.
Beautiful. My deeper emotions. Yeah.
And then we have Victoria that says all my private spaces.
Oh, I would love to have an explanation on that, but it's all my private spaces. Stunning. Okay. Great. Thank you guys for sharing this. We will slowly delve deeper. I will not introduce the theme yet completely because I want to keep on playing. I have here a few cards laying down, and the idea of these cards during the physical actions, we were spreading these cards, and actually everybody had to answer these questions for themselves. And I think it's still important to answer some questions for themselves. So I would like to invite Christos to pick a question that resonates with you right now. And I will also pick one question, and we'll give you some time to reflect on the question because I think it's very important. So my question that I picked is, does a home exist physically? Dun, 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 dun. You will have some time to think about it. So I'm very curious. Does a home exist physically, Christos?
Depends on who you're asking. So it's the truth. So
Yeah.
it's coming from an specifically geography or anthropogeography or human geography, the answer would be home can be anything, but still it has to be a place. So that means that it is various things, but they are connected. There is this sort of connection with something physical.
Interesting, yeah. Looking at the answers, or the first answers that we got, they're quite not physical, I believe. Some of them are, but plenty of them are kind of leaning towards a more conceptual idea. What question did you have over there?
Could you be homeless?
Ooh.
Which speaks to, I mean, it's a point that Paul raised, that it's the idea that when we think of home, we always think of something positive. It's a haven, something, a shelter, something that we feel safe in. And pardon Paul, but I'm going to disagree, because sometimes home can actually be something negative.
Yeah.
And we can see this with examples of domestic violence. We can see this with like all sorts of I would say natural disasters, where homes are unmade, if you want to call it. So it's a process through which home stops having the meaning that once had, and stops being what it is.
That's right, but that also, it stops at the moment where the physical, like if your home is physical, and that's, I believe that the word home, house is very interesting to have there an intersection upon. And I think, well, let's start because I don't want to spoil anything anymore.
Yes.
Because I think we're both like cooking and willing to share our thoughts and ideas. So how did we came up with the theme of the Larnaca Biennale? I think it's a very important introduction because being in Larnaca and looking around me in Larnaca, I noticed that almost a lot of people from Larnaca, they don't necessarily come from Larnaca. They have a very different background, whether they're Greek Cypriots and they're refugees in their own country, or people that are refugee from Syria or now Ukraine. Well, Lebanon as well. We have a very multifaceted and multicultural city, and everybody refers to their homes as somewhere else. And at least the people I've talked to, and that led me on this like research and route, like what does home actually mean? We all live here together, but we still refer to a different home. So this research for me kicked off, and I started questioning what is home and what does it mean, and what do we expect when somebody tells you I'm going to go home, or where do you feel home? And during my research, I found out and I realized that home is a concept, and home can be anything for anyone. So name it a memory, name it an object, or a physical body. But home can be something very spiritual as well, and have to do more with the spirit or a certain awareness. And every question and every answer on home is different, and that entirely blows my mind. So for me, home is fluid. And Christos, you as a person who studied the home for the last 10 years, please, you corrected me the last time that fluidity is not the right word for home. You spoke about porousness. Can you elaborate that?
Yes, the term, so the understanding is that home is porous, or it's characterized by porosity, meaning that its elements, its characteristics do not necessarily flow into other things. You have to imagine home as a container of ideas, of meanings, if you want to call it like that. And it has little holes under it. So if you fill it up with water, let's say that the water is these ideas, these meanings, it always overflows. It always goes into something else. So home, it's like, because we started discussing home, and there is a question that when it is posed, for me, it's very frustrating. Where is home? As if home, it's precisely a location.
Yeah.
Home can also be time, because it can also be home in the past, a home in the future. It can depend. That's why I started with home depends. It depends on the person you're asking. So home might be different depending on gender. Someone mentioned gender. It can depend on sexuality, it can depend on ethnicity, it can depend on race, it can depend on various characteristics. So yes, I'm going to basically close off with saying that home depends on the actual question that we're posing.
I love that. Yeah. What do you consider the right question when you ask about home?
What does home mean to you?
Yeah.
It's the question that should be posed, because asking someone where is home, or do you feel home here? Do you feel at home here? It's the kind of questioning that kind of suggests that home is a place, but home may not necessarily be a place. It's a bunch of feelings, a bunch of emotions that we associate with something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's home depends.
Yeah. I definitely I feel your answer, and I think we're allowed to feel today as well. Actually, always. I have I have a very interesting background. Like, I was born in Crimea, which makes me half Ukrainian and half Russian by blood. And since I'm 2, I moved to the Netherlands. And afterwards, I started studying and living my life, I guess. So I studied in Paris, in Moscow, in Hong Kong, and I lived in a bunch of other places. And when people ask me, where is your home? I'm speechless. I cannot answer. I never could answer that question. Now I can, but it wasn't always that easy. So yeah.
It's, our personal histories with what is home are quite complex. For myself, I encountered home during my research, where so I started off researching my family, who were refugees, displaced persons in Cyprus. So I was collecting information, I was collecting data, interviews, and I just had a bunch of information that I couldn't connect, basically. And then the answer was home. It's like all this bunch of information connect to how they understand home. And obviously, when we speak of refugees or displaced persons, home has a different dimension, because it's something very different to migrants, something very different to refugees especially to refugees who have left, who have abandoned their places of origin. So it's a much more complex question towards refugees. So it's as I said, it's our personal histories with home.
It depends.
Always, yes, it depends.
Paul, you mentioned with the first question that home is a safe space. Could we delve a bit deeper in your answer? What does home mean to you?
Sure. I feel that it's a very complicated situation, and I think this has to do a lot with societal norms, which we see in front of our eyes all the time. And yeah, you get different kinds of questions about home, and usually I feel that home is basically, where do you live? That is the question that you're being asked. It's not so much about home as a concept, as a feeling, as a unique structure of how you embed that into your life and into your family. So when I say that it's a safe space, it's somewhere where I would feel, for example, comfortable in the surrounding of that, whatever it is, that location, that space, that anything, whatever it would be physically. And by feeling comfortable, then I consider it to be much more of a less anxiety provoking situation. And yes, it could be anywhere. For example, right now I'm sitting in Athens in what I call now my home. It's only been 10 days and it's not been very easy. But at the same time, I'm very happy to be able to call it that. And I'm not talking about the building. I'm not talking about the space. I might be talking a little bit about all the art that my landlord is bringing me, but that's a different story.
Lucky you.
I know. But you see, again, it does come back to the safe space. It's about connecting with individuals, with groups of individuals that have something in common, whether ideologies, whether something on a social ground level. And yeah, it helps the feeling of being able to proceed with whatever else you're doing around, whether it's work, whether it's play, whether it's downtime, anything.
I loved your addition about also a comfortable place with less anxiety. I find that very beautiful. And yes, as Christos said, like homes tend to be a positive space. And I think the less anxiety gives a more positive vibe and a positive space. Exactly. And it is an important situation as well. Is there maybe?
Sorry, if I can just also respond to Christos as well, because I feel that he's so right. Because yes, it does come to a spot where there are situations where the home is not the best place to be for whatever reason, whether it's violence, whether it's disasters and so on. But I wonder, and this is maybe perhaps something that I'd like to hear from a research perspective, do individuals who do face adversity in that situation still define it as a home?
Wow.
That's an excellent, a brilliant question.
Yeah.
So the whole idea of, so I started off with arguing that home is, yes, it's perceived as something positive. And home is an idea, it's a concept, as we said, but there is an accompanying concept that goes along with home, which is home-making practices. So it's the kind of practices that we do every day that make home. So home is not something that is just there. It's something that is created and constructed again and again and again. So, for example, today I was reading like on how housework, cleaning or cooking can be considered homemaking practices. And
Sure.
Paolo Bocagni speaks about this. So the idea of home becoming, I use the term unmade. So it's a term, it's a concept that comes from research on home unmaking by Baxter and Brickell. So the idea is that the same way that home is made constantly through practices, the same way it can become unmade by similar practices. Okay, so there is some form of agency. So the idea is always there. You can say that it's a constant and it can be constructed or deconstructed, if that answers your question.
Well, can I add something to
Yeah.
that question? Because I suddenly thought about an artwork that fits in perfectly about unmaking. In 2001, there was an artist called Michael Landy, from he's British himself, and he decided to one day he came up with a radical concept, and he wanted to destroy every single possession that he had. He did. So it was actually a huge act where he had the wrecking ball and this, insane installation, and he destroyed all the books, every kind of memory that he had in physicality. And in the end, the only thing that was left is an inventory book of everything that was destroyed. And I think this practice is quite radical, but it's also a way of unmaking, I think, his home or maybe physical house and everything that surrounds him to move on and to go on. So yeah,
it's most definitely connected. So it's precisely the practice. It's the practices that actually contribute to the idea of home. So once those practices are not there, once they're either the practices themselves, this form of agency, either its end purpose is something different. Rather than constructing home, it's deconstructing it. Yeah. So then the idea of home is challenged. So it's talking about domestic violence. If you have like one of the partners, let's say, harassing or like violently, like is aggressive towards the other, it's the agencies that is this social agency that unmakes home for the other person. It's not also the ideological, because it influences the ideology of home, but it's the practice that begins it.
And it also influences that safe space where we were talking about in the beginning. Is there someone in the Zoom that wants to share the meaning of their home? You can raise your hand. I think this is a perfect moment. Awesome. Hey, Victoria.
Hello.
Hey, nice to have you here.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
I don't know, but after the start of the war, I had to sell the house that I was building for myself and by myself. And now for me, home is a place that I endow with properties of my space. The place where are my books, where is my library, my animals. And now it's not a physical place. It's just in my mind.
Yeah.
The place where I feel comfortable, safe, not more. Now I feel now it's very easy for me to find a place where I can say, "Oh, it's my home." Okay, I always rent it, but I feel for me it's my home.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Victoria. It gives goosebumps in a way that it must be very hard for you. And yes, the mind is the one that comforts in this as well.
It's I don't know what is maybe it's more difficult for refugees. For me, it was just an ethical choice. So now I can't stay in my previous home in Russia. So,
Yeah.
but for refugees, for homeless people, maybe now we can feel their situation more.
Well, I believe that that's a very interesting way of seeing it as well. As if you look at the idea of homelessness, it's something. I was doing this research last week, and I would love to hear also your input of Christos and Paul. Like, I was wondering, like, if home is an idea, and if home is a concept, and if home is a mindset in a way, and this concept doesn't exist anymore physically. We are also a little bit homeless like that, right?
It's a very nice question. So I am actually writing the review for an article I'm currently about to publish, which focuses on, in Cyprus, like following, you had the refugees, and they were unable to visit their places of origin since 1974. Then in 2003, checkpoints opened. So I'm writing this story about refugees returning home. And it's I think it's a perfect example of what happens when you go back, and then what you were remembering, what you had in your mind, is no longer there. So it's I'm going to refer to, it's another work by it's a Cypriot author, actually. He's a clinical psychologist, Renos Papadopoulos, who wrote on refugees and trauma, and he said, he spoke on how refugees understand home, and he gave like 3 features of this. He named the concept nostalgic disorientation. So you're nostalgic, you miss something that you don't really know what it is. Yeah. That's why it's nostalgic, and that's why it's disorientation. So.
And I also heard like that nostalgia in Greek, when you translate it, you have nostas and algia.
Nostas and algia,
and
yes.
that means the physical pain of missing the home, right?
Yes, it's algos is the pain, and nostos is this. I think it can be translated as the wish to return. So going back to Papadopoulos, he mentioned that home is the first feature of home is direction. So home is both the past and the future, is where you come from and where you want to go to. The second feature of home is its entity, as he called it. So there is the material entity, but there is also the intangible entity. I could go back to this later. And the third feature of home for refugees, which is very, very interesting, it's the homecoming. So what happens when refugees manage to return? So he split this process, this homecoming, into the physical homecoming, so the actual corporal kind of return, and the psychological homecoming. So this urge, this need to re-emplace the meanings that you once had with that home. So in what I'm writing now is that it's precisely the inability to re-emplace those meanings, those feelings back into home, into the place of origin, for a range of reasons. So either the house was divided in two. I think I already spoke to you about this. So there was a structure, but rather than being a whole structure, it was divided in two. A second point was because Cypriot culture understands home, and we often conflate house and home, obviously, but we understand the house as a place of cleanliness, as a place of order, which is also connected with gender, because housework is gendered in Cyprus, at least it was for a long period. And then because it's gendered, it's also connected with, it has a symbolic meaning of the woman being pure. So when refugees went back and they saw the house is dirty, they saw chicken and rabbits in the house. So for them it was, and I'm going to refer to Mary Douglas, who says that dirt is, it has to be contextualized. Dirt is something being out of place. So shoes by themselves are not dirty. If I put my shoes on the table, that is dirty.
Wow.
So what she says is that, so what happened, what I understood with these refugees is that, chicken and rabbits and cages are not dirty by themselves, but when they interpret them within the home, it's dirt.
When they're displaced as well, in a
exactly.
way.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's like you see them out of place. So that for them was dirty. So the whole idea was that home is this idea, it's a cultural specific concept of having one building hosting one family, then you have it two families, so it doesn't fit.
Yeah.
And then you have this separation between environment and home. Then you see the environment intruding home. So it's not just because there were chicken in the house, it's what it means. It's the symbolism of it.
So it's the symbols that we relate to it.
Yes.
Yeah, and
precisely.
it's the symbols that we relate to our homes as well.
We also have some people that want to share things with us.
I would like to thank Victoria for sharing this personal story. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah. So we have Antigone that wants to add something.
Please.
Diony.
Hi.
Hey, hello, Diony.
Hi.
About the point you made for home and making, I would like to add my personal opinion about that.
Please.
So I think that if your home is lacking the feeling of safety, then for me, from my personal experience, you would find a place like under your desk or inside a small drawer, anything that would make you feel safe, and that would be your home inside the house. So I don't think it's just practices. Like, of course, it's practices as well. Like when you suffer horrible things in your home, then your mind goes elsewhere. So you're not really there. So it can still be your home. But I think the other part of it is more what makes it still a home.
Well, like, can I ask a question? Like, I'm very curious when you say when you open your drawer of your desk and you can find home. For me, that was very touching because, like, of course, like, what do you see in the drawer? What's inside? Can you guide us?
No, you hide inside the drawer.
You hide inside the drawer. Yeah.
It's dark and quiet.
Mm.
And nobody will search in the drawer.
So it's about also hiding and creating this safe space for yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
This goes to the idea that there's another concept which is connected to home apart from porosity, which is scale.
Scale.
Yes. So your house. So it's also important not to conflate or confuse house and home. There is a connection, obviously, but it's important not to confuse them. So your house might be a dangerous point, something that it's violent. But then you have within the house another space in a different scale, in a smaller scale, that you find home there.
Yeah.
So it's this idea of scale, which it's also very, very important. So a drawer, it's obviously smaller than a house, but it can be a home.
Yeah.
So it's actually a very important. It's an excellent observation.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I think which is also a very interesting idea is that even the word home or house is not represented in a lot of languages. Like even researching the word home in Greek, like it's almost impossible. Like I know spiti, which means house, and then homeland, which I don't remember. Patrida, exactly. But like there is no real word for home. And for instance, I also know in Dutch, it's huis, which means home, house, and thuis with a T in front of it, which is supposed to mean home, but it still refers to the house.
Yeah.
And then in French, it's also similar, and in Russian, and so in Arabic as well, which I find fascinating. Like, do we only have a home in English language?
It's not precisely, because we already discussed this. And so the idea was that going into the history of home was that the whole idea of home is based on the family, first of all.
Yeah.
So, and not just any family. So it's the heterosexual parents and 2 children living in a house with a piece of land.
Yes.
So that was imagined and conceptualized as home. And it's a product of modernity, of modernization. So that's why often home as a concept does not exist in other language. It's something that came with modernity. It's something that evolved through time, and that's why it's untranslatable, I would say. So in Greek, you cannot really translate it. Like you have yes, spiti. You have. I've heard also the term ikio, which means familiar.
Yeah.
Which again connect with family because it's ikogenia. So there is always these connections with either house or family or these kind of terms. But it's funny because I consider English not to be the richest language. But
depends who you ask.
Yes, obviously. Again, depends. It's the idea that it's only kind of conceptualized in English.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wants to share?
Yes, we have Julia Simone. If you can unmute your microphone, Julia.
Sorry, I have 2 of them.
Hello.
So I can also share my experience. So the easiest way to say is I'm Italian, I'm living in Germany currently. And I'm taking part to this meeting as artist, but I'm also a physicist. And so I have also a different background. Another aspect of home. So nowadays we speak a lot about home because topic of refugees or people who had to live, as a huge amount of people who in the last time had to leave home. But like the case of scientists, many of us about 10 or 20 years ago had really also to leave the countries because of similar problem. Just, when it's elite, refugee or migrants, it's not so taken into account. And so my situation is that really a lot of us have to leave home or whatever you call. So the country for which you invested a lot of effort because they decided was not important or not so relevant to invest in research, invest in the future. And you see now the situation they have. So I would say, as speaking as scientist, in this case, and not as an artist, I feel home now in Germany because as physicist and female coming from Italy, when I go back, also my family, my home, and I'm a stranger for almost what I do. And here it's perfectly normal that a woman also do male things, that his own idea, that want to invest time not only in family, which is also important, but also in, let's say, a big family, which is the world. And so it's a strange thing. That's why I say origin and language for me is kind of nostalgia. That so I had also ancient Greek, modern Greek is not mine, but I had also humanistic background. That's why I also understand. And I can say for several years, I had this kind of nostalgia. And at some point I gave up. I decided I don't need anymore because you start feeling home almost everywhere. When you are yourself, when you know who you are, and when you are able, to exchange and to establish relationship with the other people in a way that you feel okay, that you feel it makes sense to you, at least at that point, that's home. So I have so many home, and any point that you already visit somehow feels home. People I already talked to them are home, but new people who make sense, like this meeting now, it's also kind of home for me.
Thank you. And
so that's
I feel your home as well, because I realize that feeling at home is also having certain values, and it's also like not a safe space anymore when your values are broken, or when you cannot be and exist as who you are and act how you want.
It's brilliant because I relate a lot, I have to admit. And because a couple of years ago, I was in a conference with one guest speaker. I hope I recall her name properly. It was Maja Korach. So she was studying home, but she extended it in a kind of a level I had never imagined before. So in a sense, like she described home like as an academic. She was saying, like, you need a department or kind of a discipline where you would feel, a university or a department where you would feel at home. So when you're interdisciplinary, you often struggle to find home. So like, I don't know, like you're a physicist or you're like this kind of you have this kind of background, this kind of knowledge, and then you cannot apply it because back home, the direction is completely different. We were discussing also the other time, like in Cyprus, universities in their majority are focusing on vocational training. So you have all these disciplines like humanities and arts, which are kind of, I don't want to say like neglected, but like they're becoming second choice. So you have like brilliant, like you have a lot of like artists and academics that study abroad and they have all these ideas, and basically they cannot find an academic home.
But I kind of relate to it, like the countries where we've been speaking about before, that when you don't belong to one country but to multiple, and your home is a bit everywhere, it's a bit similar. But then according to studies and according to knowledge and research, of course. And I think definitely it's a very important point to create it. Yeah, the university of the home, of the homecoming.
It's the kind of discussion when you can have this, I don't know, philosophical, this kind of abstract discussions, and in relation to topics that interest you, that are deep in your heart, kind of, and you're not able to.
Yeah. I kind of want to go back to the country situation, like because I thought also about an academic, but this is a philosopher, Kwame Anthony Appiah, and I love to give this example because it's a very interesting take on humanity, and he To tell a little bit about his background, like he has a Ghanaian father and a British mother. He was born in Ghana in a community. When he was 6, he moved to London, where he was raised, and he studied at Oxford University. He finished, went to New York, is now a professor at the NYU, I believe, or maybe Boston University. Correct me if I'm wrong. But in his book, he tells about when people ask him in Ghana where he's from, he answers, I'm Ghanaian, I was born here. And they say, no, you're too white. When you go to London and people ask him, where are you from? He says, I'm from London. I was raised here and I went to university. And no, where are you really from? So that gets a bit awkward. When people in New York ask him where he's from, he answers, I'm from New York. I live here 35 years. My house is here. But they say, no, you have a British accent. So where does the home lie? And at the same time, reading his book, he's an atheist and he's gay, which is also quite complicated in this country where he was born. So it's about rejection in a way. And he wrote a book, which is absolutely a recommendation to read. It's called The Lies That Bind. And he's referring to 5 pillars, which is the pillar of sex, about the pillar of countries, about the pillar of religion, class, and race. Exactly. And that is the thing that that are lies, that are stories where we believe in, and stories that we create, and kind of together we say, oh, this is the truth, but is it? I find it absolutely fascinating. So
it's very interesting. I think it's because we discuss often that home depends, and we have already established that. But then we also mentioned that it depends on a range of characteristics and a range of social characteristics. So I think the book, it relates to the social constructionness of these characteristics. And like going back, home is a social construction. We have to remember that it's a social construction that we kind of attach feelings and emotions to. So, but at the end of the day, it is a social construction. So societies, in plural, guide us towards what home is, at the same time as we decide whether that home is important or not.
Yeah. And who are we to decide, right? I think home is personal to every one of us, as we've heard all the answers until now. Like I almost never heard the same answer. And I love that. So I was speaking to a tech guy in Cyprus the other day, and I asked him the question, what does home mean to you? And he said, well, actually, Yev, it's the metaverse. I have my games, I have my all my equipment, I have the latest Nikes, everything I can't afford in normal life, I have it here. And life is actually a bit better when I put on my my goggles and the rest. And I found it absolutely fascinating because I can understand. I cannot relate, but I can understand.
It's the scale of it.
Exactly.
It moves beyond kind of what, I mean, a home for you is different than what home is for him. Home for him is very different than what it is for you, what it is for me, what it is for, I don't know, for everyone.
Yeah.
So it is something personal, but I'm going back to the idea that like societies guide us into attaching these feelings of home into things.
Scary. But like I also want to say, like the theme of the Biennale is not just home, because like yes, the home is important, and I think we touched base on what home is and what home could be. But in the end, the theme of the Biennale is home away from home. How do you read that, Paul? Do you have there maybe some ideas about?
I think now is where it starts getting a bit complicated, because we had a really good discussion so far about home, and thank you everybody for putting it down. Now, home away from home. So I'm still a little bit confused what my first home essence should be. But I feel for me, I'd probably say it would be a parallel to what I consider the definition of home in a space that is maybe might not be physical space, but in an area which would be relatively different to what we or what I initially defined as home.
So do you mean, is it like getting out of your comfort zone in a way, or like how do you define that?
No, I wouldn't call it like that. But let me give an example of something that is very related to what we've been saying so far. If we're talking about misplaced individuals and then that happening over a long period of time, the social construct of the stories that lie behind the misplacement become aligned with what memory is. And the thing is, memory is also provided to individuals who had no chance of having memory of what is in the social construct of that memory. So where I'm saying remember to people, I'm asking individuals who there was no chance they could remember, and this is pretty defined in terms of age, that they could not remember because they never got to experience it, but they would be remembering through my memories of having the experience of the space, of the feeling, of the family, of the neighborhood, of the city, of the village, of the so on. And I think this, at least I'm talking in terms of the Cyprus area, it can become very, very confusing. I feel it has been confusing because then we tried as a nation to reconstruct it, because I think we felt it was bad to say, remember something which there was no chance of you remembering. And sorry, I've gone a bit of a tangent in terms of remembering a memory of something that nobody used to know, but I feel that it does relate to the home away from the home. Because if, for example, my grandparents wanted to take me to show me the space which they considered their home, which they had to leave. And then they would be asking me to consider it to be my home too. Now, maybe I could get to love it to be a home. Maybe I could get to appreciate it to be, but nobody can force that to be my home away from home if my home is not there right now. So okay. I know I may be sounding a little bit like off range, but I feel that the home away from home can have multiple meanings in the same way that we were discussing home in the first place.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love your dot because I think it does fit in here as well. It is one of those situations. But maybe I can give you an example that we spoke about a previous time we met up together, and that was, if you remember, the great advert. Well, for me it's great anyway, the individuals who were coming from different cultural backgrounds, whether Eastern Europe or Western Europe, and they immigrated to the United States. They were getting on an advert to say, now I'm going home, and home was defined as Greece. So nobody was Greek by origin or by culture, but because of the birthplace of history of the ancient Greek times, they kind of did a twist on it. And I feel
this ad in the notes because I recommend to everyone to see it.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yes, so we will have notes at the end.
Okay, that's really good. So that, I think that is something of home away from home too. But again, I feel if I were to sum it up, it would be, I have my definition, me as an individual, of what home is, And then at the same time, I feel I can also define my home away from home. And that could be in any aspect, whether it's a feeling, whether it's a space, whether it's a group of individuals, maybe it's an extended family that's not family by blood. So, you know, there's a lot of an amalgamation of what could mean an away from home.
Definitely. Yeah, Paul, I think you shot it in the right heart. And I also made me think about a work that our Cypriot artist Lia Lapithi made. I don't remember what year, but she created a performance on secondhand memory and about how we are buying these secondhand memories and carrying them with us in our lives. And this is absolutely very strong and very painful at the same time.
This reminds me of, it's a very famous concept. You're familiar with Marian Hirsch's concept of post-memory?
Yes. Yeah.
So post-memory is the idea that, and Hirsch takes, she analyzes the work of an artist, Art Spiegelman. So the father of Art Spiegelman was he was Jewish. He was a prisoner in I think Auschwitz, if I'm not mistaken. So growing up, basically arts, they had a kind of complex relationship, but dad was always telling him stories. And Art Spiegelman grew up to be a cartoon painter, like a cartoonist, basically, yeah. And at some point, I think after his dad died, he wanted to capture his dad's history. So he came up with it. I think it's 3 graphic novels. So the first one is called Mouse, and what he does, it's basically it's a depiction of the Holocaust, but rather than using human kind of figures, he uses animals. So Jews are mice. If I recall, Germans are cats, and everyone else is a pig.
Wow.
Now, the interesting part is that within the graphic novel, there is a picture so there was a very famous picture taken during the liberation of Auschwitz, where there were the prisoners on the barbed wire, and they were looking at the photographer. I do not recall the picture, but it's very famous. And basically what Spiegelman did, he just reproduced the picture, and he just put mice faces.
Replaced. Yeah, I remember
so
that.
The idea is that, you have this kind of memory, which is, it's not really memory. It's like, it's memory that is passed on. That's hence the term post-memory, which it kind of influences the way that we feel, the way that we understand, the way we think about the present. It kind of, there is a term which I do not recall now.
Maybe
but
it will come back.
It's actually the way that the memories and experiences of our parents are telescoped through our experiences and affect our experiences.
But also through nurture, of course.
Yes, precisely. Yeah, it's the family. It's key in this. There was 2 more points that I wanted to make in relation to Paul's kind of point, and it refers to other works. So the first one, it's a work by a Russian art historian called Svetlana Boym, who wrote about the future of nostalgia, because Paul mentioned the growing up in grandparents and like the house and all these kind of things. So Boym basically says that there are 2 types of nostalgia. There is the reflective nostalgia, where you had something, you lost it, and you reflect on it. You understand that it has gone, okay, but you remember it kindly. Then there is this other type of nostalgia, which is called restorative nostalgia, which is, it's kind of, you're nostalgic of something and you're so obsessed with it that you want to reconstruct it. So I had an experience with this where refugees. So in Cyprus, like communities in villages, they used to live. So the houses were next to each other, and they were building. I mean, because of this, you had these micro societies within the neighborhood where it was blocked from the outside world, and everything was happening within the neighborhood. So there was this family where they were, displaced, and because they couldn't afford to buy land in order to build houses, basically they started building on top of each other. So it's
like a mutation.
Yes, it's kind of, it's precisely, it's a mutation of that thing that like it was a symbol, something that because they couldn't reconstruct precisely, they altered it, it mutated, but it was still there.
Amazing.
So third point and last one.
I love
Apologies.
your points. I will make another point after your point.
Paul again mentioned about Greece, and we were referring before to the lack of a term to describe home. I recalled there was something I wanted to note that I forgot. It's really funny that even though in Greek we do not have a term for home, the first story being told about home was in Greece. Oh. And it concerns, everyone knows it. It's the story of Ulysses, Odysseus. So yes, it's the story of going to war and then trying to go home.
Yes,
being lost for 10 years, and it's very, very interesting, and it goes back to the work of Papadopoulos when he says when Odysseus finds his way back home, he feels home not when he sees the building. He sees the first time that he feels at home is when he sees the smoke from the chimney. Which is, it's like Homer describes this. So it's
someone
home.
Is there.
Yes. It's like it's the way that it was described.
It's amazing. And like about the smoke in the chimney, it's incredible because like also the goddess of home, when you go back to mythology, is Hestia, and Hestia, she's the goddess of the fire or the fireplace, but also the goddess of home. And the reason why is because like we all gather around the fireplace, around the smoky chimney, in order to tell the stories and tell our ideas and share that. I think it's incredible, and you triggered me to read Odysseus again, or Ulysses in the right way to pronounce it. And I wanted to top up because unfortunately we have to wrap up already. And I look at Maria. How many?
In 6 minutes,
Ouch.
but we have a raised hand.
Okay.
Like, let's hear Katia for for her input. Katia mo?
Katia
is raising hand. No?
Okay.
But just to say that Victoria shared with us that in Japanese, the hieroglyphic for home has a shape similar to a roof, the shelter.
Wow.
And she sent the actual shape.
Okay.
Katia says 1 second. Here is Katia.
Hey, Katia.
Hi.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I heard, but I was, away in the other room and the video was muted. That's why I needed some time. Sorry for that.
You're here with us. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I was listening. The thing that I wanted to share was actually inspired by Giulia, the Italian lady. Yeah, and if it's okay now, I can share that. If not, I can do that later.
No, please.
I don't know.
I'm sitting at the pin of my chair. Like I'm very excited now.
Okay. Yeah, the moment I listened to Giulia, I was like, wow, that fits a lot. Some of my, let's say, personal experience and also the background that I got from my cultural heritage. I'm partly Jewish, and Jews have always had this story over exodus and difficult life of a homeless nation. And as a Jew, I was always taught that, we called that the third shrine. It was like the temple that was, the second temple was destroyed like tons of years ago. And it was a very important place for Jews, but we can easily make a parallel to home, because it's like when Jews say the third temple is not a house, it's inside of you. No matter where you live, you carry it with you, and like that, no Romans or any other enemies can actually destroy it. And that's what I remembered when I listened to Julia. I was like, really, home is you and your values and the way you feel yourself, and you recreate it like whenever you go, if you are good with it inside. That's what I just wanted to add based on Julia and the heritage that I got.
Very strong. Thank you, Katia. Like, it's super good addition as well. Yeah. And it is. It definitely is.
Thank you also from myself. Yeah, I say, because when this happened to the scientists, there was no language, no topic, and no, let's say, social topic around. So all of us had to experience that, and we could not talk to anybody. So that's why I like also that now it's possible to talk about.
Definitely, absolutely. And I would like to give another layer as well. I was talking to another scientist. I'm also talking to non-scientist people, but this is an environmentalist, and I was actually very stunned by it, because she brought me on a completely different perspective on home away from home, because she said, Yev, look, our natural habitat or our natural home is the environment, and it is the nature, and it is actually everything that lives around us. And actually, by building cities and living in urban constructs and in houses, we go further away from our natural habitat. So home away from home can also be seen as an environmental point of view, and again, from a completely different perspective, which I find also stunning. And this also happened when it comes to maybe religion or sexuality. When you cannot express your sexuality, who you are, and you feel home in your sexuality, you're also home away from home. So I think that there is so much more to seek and to research and to delve in. In the open table discussions, we always had a last question, and I don't think that we have time for this last question, but I want to throw it in the group so you will think about it in your own time, and you're also free to contact us to speak, to share, to express some ideas. But the last question is always, how do you translate all this in art? Because we can theorize home, and home has a very big and interesting theory, and home away from home can also go and get lost in theoretics, but in the end we need to express it in the language of the artists, whether this language is paint, whether this language is photography, videography, or maybe a digital environment, poetry, theater, dance. I see so many possibilities, and I would like to challenge the artists to ask these questions that we ask today to each other, for each other, get inspired by each other's stories, and realize what home means to you, and what is home away from home, and how do you make this translation part. I think that's very important. A lot of artists, they did it already. There's a lot of inspiration. We share on our Larnaca Biennale every month some notes with examples also from artists that do that. So if you need some inspiration, delve into that. And I want to end on the note that contemporary art, what is that? You know, contemporary art is not something because I created something now that it is contemporary. Contemporary art has to do with our reflection on contemporary times, whether it's psychological, political, sociological, humanistic, environmental, or whatsoever. You reflect on the time where you live in, and so also in your time, in the time that you perceive and live. And from there, you create the art. So I want to challenge everybody to start the critical thinking and build their stories and their artworks from that. So thank you very much. Paul, thank you very much for tuning in from Athens, and I wish you good luck with your new house. It sounds exquisite with all the artworks. And Christos, thank you very much for joining as well. I think it's so valuable to have also an academic point of view, and especially someone who studied home for so long. I think it's very valuable. And I want to thank also everyone in the group, in the Zoom that joined us today and also shared their ideas. Larnaca Makerspace, amazing. And also Momentum 12, it's not there yet, but I will speak for the future now. And we are making a bit of future today. So thank you all. And if you have questions, please don't hesitate to contact us. We're there for you.
Thank you all so much for
Thank you.
tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye, bye-bye.
And stay tuned. And don't forget, open call ends 31st of May. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you.
an amazing conversation. Amazing.
Yes, please.